Howdy y'all, Michael here, and welcome back to what I'm sure is a much anticipated review of my Lionel HO Scale Challenger. This is a model that was produced around 2003. I believe it was imported for Lionel by Korea Brass. It was, I would argue, probably the best iteration of Lionel HO that we've seen so far. It definitely isn't perfect, and we'll kind of get into that in this video, obviously, but yeah. So here's just the general unboxing. That's the brochure that comes with it, kind of talk about the history of the Challenger, and of course on the front cover is the 3985, the most famous of the Challengers that were built by Alco. I, of course, do not have the 3985. I have number 3980, the two-tone gray with aluminum striping. Lionel made several different variations, obviously, you can see. Here's the owner's manual and a couple other little brochures. If you want to try and pause and read, you can, but I kind of flipped through it a little quick. But yeah, this just goes over general operation in DC, DCC, and some general troubleshooting, stuff like that. Just a little warning pamphlet using MRC stuff, I guess. And then there's the service records. Basically just whoever is a Lionel dealer can service that engine, or that's who they recommend you have service if anything happens. So I'm getting this thing out of the box. I guess I'll kind of dive into a little bit of the history. Oh, there's some extra spare parts as well. Dummy front couplers in case you want to double head this thing. And that wire is actually for drop-in smoke units. I'll cover that a little later. But so, like I said, my understanding is that this locomotive was imported by Korea Brass for Lionel. I don't know if Lionel designed this in-house or if they had Korea design it. But this tooling ended up going to MTH Electric Trains when Lionel was kind of going in a lawsuit war with them. I think the fact that it was also a QSI system as well, and MTH was going to war with QSI as well, also kind of sealed this stuff's fate. So this tooling ended up going to MTH along with the gas turbine that they made, and MTH produced those for a while. And actually, if you look at the catalog when MTH first announced these, you can see it's just the Lionel Challenger. So, and now Scale Trains has this tooling. So I'd be really curious to see when Scale Trains plans to announce this. I'm sure that they'll probably make something once the 3985 finishes up its restoration in Silvis. So, but that's yet to be seen. One thing I will point out too is this packaging. You can see I'm kind of fiddling with it here to put everything back, but it's honestly some of the nicest packaging I've had. I do miss the style of box where it was just the locomotive and tender separated, wrapped snugly in like soft foam and plastic, and all tucked in. Not too much of a risk of stuff breaking off. And I mean, this box is sturdy. It should hold up pretty well to any rough handling. So next up, we're going to go ahead and just take a look at some general aspects of the locomotive, starting with weight. Yeah, this engine, or the engine by itself, is almost 2 pounds. Solid die-cast metal. That is absolutely fantastic for something this big. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less. The wild part, though, is the tender. The tender is almost its own locomotive in terms of weight. I do not understand why this thing is so stinking heavy. Not even my Broadway Big Boy, which has a die-cast tender, its tender's not even that heavy. Here's my feeble attempt at trying to connect the engine and tender. You can see I end up just giving up on it, but it's just a socket in the back of the rearmost engine set. It just plugs into. Here's a nice side view of the fireman side of the engine. I actually did this by just putting my phone in a gondola on a separate piece of track. So if you want to install those front dummy couplers, you just pull that thing out. It's like a NEM socket, I think. Obviously got your working headlight and number boards as well. I don't know if anybody had done working number boards on UP Steam up to this point. And the stacks, once again, are drop-in smoke unit ready. They're hollowed down. Nice die-cast elephant ears. Brass safety valves and stuff like that. The molding and the paint are absolutely fantastic on this engine. It's got an opening vent hatch for the cab. Windows slide. This thing has a full cab interior. I'll show that in a little bit. It actually looks really, really nice. You can see, though, that there's no crew figure. The other thing you'll notice also is that the dynamo is not where I would normally expect it to be on a Challenger, or most people would. It's actually mounted right there behind the third axle on the rear engine set. It should normally be just ahead of the turret. And so here I'm going to kill the lights and give you guys a look at the inside of the cab. It's actually molded really well. You can see even they got the correct back head, the door for oil burning steam locomotives like this. Once again, no crew figures though, so that's something I'm probably going to want to fix in the future. No ghost trains. Tender, despite being incredibly unnecessarily heavy, is pretty good as well. I did forget to show the volume controls, and this is well where the water hatches are. Only the backup light functions. The tail light and marker lights don't work. I also think Lionel missed out on a great opportunity to have the steam lines added. Since this is a passenger engine, it would only make sense. Here's the engineer side as well. You can see the throttle. So at this point, I figured we want to go ahead and tear down the locomotive. The mechanism, it's a mixed bag. It's got some really good parts. I mean, I generally don't strip locomotives down, look at the interior, but so to get the stuff off, you want to take the brake rigging out, obviously, and then there's 3 screws. I ended up removing the trailing truck because I thought I had to, but you don't. You should only have to take those 3 screws off on each driver set. But it's going to reveal something that I think is one of the biggest downfalls of this locomotive so far. I mean, I would say it's a pretty nice engine, but here's where I think it kind of falls flat on its face and needs some serious improvement. And I think MTH definitely improved on this when they got the tooling. That is, the drive axles don't come out of the block that they sit in, the chassis block. They're pressed onto the axle with the axle already in place, and same with the gear. So in order to get those out, to clean them, you got to basically take the whole thing apart, and it's just not something I think anybody wants to do or should do. I'm also going to go into eventually pointing out the gauging issue. But for now, if you want to get the boiler shell off, you got to take 4 screws out, 2 under the smoke box, and then 2 under the firebox. The smoke box ones, you'll need a longer screwdriver like what I got there, preferably something magnetic. And once you got those out, should pop off, and then you'll have to disconnect a handful of plugs. One for the number boards up at the front. You got to fish it out through the smoke unit mount. And then the cab light. That one's pretty straightforward to take out. So now that we've got the shell off, you can see the bracket where the smoke units drop in. There's the blue plug is where the number boards go, and the white plug in the back is where the cab light sits in, and you can also get a glimpse at the motor there. And here's the builder's plates, which are legible. I couldn't zoom in far enough on them, but since we got the boiler off, figured take a look. So here's where the gauging issue that I brought up. So I believe the general standard for HO scale is between 14.3 and 14.4 millimeters. You can see that one's 14.28, so we're pretty close to standard there. But then you take a look at the next one, and it's 14.54 millimeters. The gauging is all over the place on this engine. I don't think I do every single axle, but just to give you an idea. And I also don't think the wheels are perfectly straight on the axles either, because I remember checking the gauge on one of these, and I could have sworn I remember the front axle being like 14.1, and then one of the more rearmost axles being like 14.6. It's all over the place on this engine. So if you've got any imperfections in your track, it will find them. I had to completely rebuild my first track plan for my HO layout to get this thing to run properly. So here I'm just taking the tender off. It's only 4 screws, 1 in each corner. Comes out pretty easy. And then once it's off, you'll want to disconnect the plug for the volume controls on the rear. I feel like there's one other control up there that I missed, and I can't remember what it is. As soon as you get that off, you can already see that there's a extra lead weight on the chassis as well. like this tender already doesn't weigh enough. I keep forgetting how big these speakers are too. I'm sure if you dropped like a nicer decoder in there than the QSI one, it would sound fairly good as it is. But yeah, they still might need replaced just because of their age. Alright, so with the gist of the model kind of gone over and shown off, I think it's time to shut up and let the Challenger speak for itself. I'm going to hook it up to a passenger train and just let it do some hot laps around the layout. So enjoy. So as we bring things to a close here, final thoughts are, obviously this engine is a little bit of a mixed bag, but overall I'd say that it is a really nice model. If you can get your hands on one of these for under 300, I think you've got a good deal on this engine. They're pretty decent for what they are. Again, you just have to make sure that you've got good track work. And it's kind of a bummer that Lionel didn't get to take this range any farther, but is what it is. And with them announcing the Berkshires recently, I think that it's going to open a lot of new doors. I'd be curious to see how it stacks up to this engine. But yeah, so that's going to do it for this look at Lionel's HO Challenger. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please do let me know what you think of the new format here. And I guess I'll see you guys in the next one.